It's day 3 for the League's 5 reveals, and today's was absolutely massive. I was 100% expecting that we were going to get reveals here and there when it came to Echo bosses and weapons, but mostly on like a 1 boss and 1 weapon reveal per day. Not dropping every single Echo boss and every single Echo weapon on just day 3. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into all of the weapons with what bosses they're going to be dropped from, and see which regions just got a mega buff, because this absolutely changes everything. First off, we have Asgarnia, and this Echo boss is going to be Cerberus. And if you weren't able to watch the reveal video, essentially in order to unlock the Echo bosses, you are going to take on their common variants, and they will drop Echo orbs similar to like an Awakener's orb from the DS2 bosses. But rather than just being able to use 1 orb per kill, as soon as you get the orb drop, you will permanently unlock the Echo boss for the rest of the league. Conveniently, with things like Cerberus being a Slayer boss, you will not have to have a Slayer task in order to take on the Echo Cerberus. But now for its drop, it'll drop the Dog Sword, which is essentially every single God Sword combined into one. The base stats are equivalent, but when using the special attack, it'll take away 50% of your bar and apply all 5 of the status effect from every God Sword in the game, giving you extra damage and accuracy from Arma, the stat reduction of Bandos, freezing your target with Zami, and then a massive heal of your hit points from both Sarah and Ancient, while still giving you the Prayer effect from Sarah. Now this Echo weapon's not going to be a game-breaking one where you're constantly going to have to be camping it the entire time, but it does undoubtedly make it the best special attack weapon to carry with you for almost any bossing around the entire game, outside of probably a few different areas. As someone who is potentially picking Asgarnia, I'm definitely a little sad it wasn't the Giant Mole, but I think Cerberus is a good close second. Moving on, next one we have the Desert, and there's no surprise that this one's coming from the Calphite Queen. And the Calphite's Echo drop is going to be the Drygore Blowpipe. And the example was given basically the range equivalent of the Osmanton's Fang, a faster and highly more accurate version of the Blowpipe that will still be using darts as its ammunition. Pre-nerf Blowpipe in the main game was already incredibly strong for a long period of time. I can only imagine how good this weapon's actually going to be, on top of also having some other status effects from the combat masteries we have yet to see. Moving over to Morania, we're going to be having the Grotesque Guardians, and similar to that of Cerberus, once you get the initial Echo drop, you no longer need a task in order to take on the Echo boss, and the Echo Guardians will drop the Gloves of the Damned, which in terms of their base stats have equivalent stats to that of Barrow's Gloves, but its special effect, 1, it will act as the Amulet of the Damned, giving you all of the Amulet of the Damned effects on your Barrow sets, but it also has a secondary ability where it will double all set effects and those applied by the Amulet of the Damned. And if we hop over here, you can see all of the effects right here in this table that the Amulet of the Damned applies on each set. Some of them more underwhelming or overwhelming than others. Carol's, it would give you a 50% chance of hitting twice with 1 attack. But with it not only doubling the set effect from the Amulet of the Damned and just the base set effect itself, using these gloves with a full set of DH will allow you to hit nearly 200% extra damage if you are sitting just around 1 HP. Once again, combat masteries are definitely going to play a factor in this type of relic, with it having so many potential different special effects. But depending on your region choices, I could definitely see using this with Darok being a highly efficient way of killing some bosses. Next up we have Wildy, and this Echo boss is going to be the KBD. I think this one's incredibly fitting. But fortunately for Wildy pickers, this boss is going to have 2 different drops. One being the Thousand Dragon Ward as a shield slot, and then another being the Thunder Khopesh as a melee weapon. The Khopesh itself offers pretty strong just base attack stats along with its melee strength, but its extra ability is it's also going to have an AoE effect. There's a 20% chance to trigger this AoE effect, and it'll hit anything in a 3x3 radius. But along with its base ability, it also has a special attack that'll use 50% of the spec bar. And as you just saw, it'll attack twice, and if either attack is successful, an additional lightning bolt will be summoned, rolling up to 100% of the original max hit. But along with the sword, we'll also have the 1000 Dragon Ward, boosting basic stats that are already better than that of the Avernic Defender, but it also has the special effect of granting immunity to basically any status effect in the entire game. And personally, Wildy was one of my potential picks this time around just to change things up from some of my previous league routes. And this one dramatically shakes things up with its ability to offer both a very strong melee weapon and already a better offhand than I would be getting by picking Morania or Asgarnia. Next we have Canin and the Thermi Smoke Devil boss, and the Echo Thermi is going to drop the Devil's Element, which is an offhand item which is going to provide unlimited elemental runes, but also doubling the damage to all bosses that have an elemental weakness. Meaning if something has a 50% weakness to air, it will bump up to 100, 40% to 80, or any respective amount just like that. And after some recent changes, if magic is potentially one of your routes, obviously Canin is always a hotly picked choice. Base stats, it also offers a 6% buff to magic damage with a 20% accuracy. But after a ton of different elemental weakness changes since the previous league, this item could be a bit more viable than ever. Jumping over to Fremi, we have the Dagoth Kings. And if there's a region that gets a serious buff based on its echo weapons, I think this one takes the cake. Dropping both a new ring and amulet, boasting 30 accuracies across the board for attack and defense, along with 10 prayer bonus each, 15 melee and range strength, and a 10% damage buff for magic with the amulet, and an additional 5% damage with the ring. 2 items from one region that single-handedly do a insane buff to any combat style, and adding insane benefits to any other echo weapon or any region with any boss, that even without anything else are incredibly strong just themselves. And if there is one other thing to mention is that the echo bosses for the Dagoth Kings are going to be one of the more difficult ones out of all the existing coming. And in terms of difficulty, they are listed as the second most difficult in Master Tier. And I know I had no intentions of going Fremi whatsoever in this league, but both of these items are making me slightly second guess that. Moving on to Tanin, we have none other than the Corrupted Hunlef being the Echo boss. And one thing to know with this Echo boss is once you get the drop, the Echo variant of the Hunlef will allow you to skip the entire preparation phase of the gauntlet. So as soon as you jump into the Echo variant, you'll go straight into the boss fight. The Echo item coming from Tanin will be the Crystal Blessing. And base stats, it just has a prayer bonus of 5, but its special effect is the Crystal Armor bonus of accuracy and damage. Will apply to any and all melee weapons when you have it equipped. And if you didn't already know, these bonuses would be a plus 30% in accuracy and a plus 15% in damage. But also potentially a little underrated in strength when you do consider this is just going to be a blessing slot item. But for the final 2 regions, the first one we have is Korinth or Zea. And this Echo boss is going to be Hespori. The Echo variant of Hespori, once you get the drop, you will not have to wait for the long timer for the seed to grow. You'll be able to just go straight into the boss fight. And I think this is one of the more interesting Echo weapons out of the entire bunch, because this is going to be a tribrid, basically salamander-style weapon that you are able to use for all 3 different combat styles. You can see the magic formula for your base hit calculator. One really interesting effect is when you are using the melee version of this attack, you can actually do it from gaps away, using it as like a safe spot. You don't have to be directly against the NPC. And I do want to know you do have to charge this Echo weapon. It'll be done with 1 Nature Rune and 5 Earth Runes. But I think this is one I'm going to be waiting in the upcoming days for people to release some DPS charts for me to really better understand how good this one actually is. But now for the 9th and final Echo boss we have is Soul. And this Echo Orb works slightly different because in order to get the Echo boss variant, you do only have to complete 1 of the Colosseum runs. With its completion, it is a guaranteed drop. And when you take on the Echo variant, you don't have to go through all of the initial waves. A couple of kickers with this fight before we jump into the items. This is listed as Grand Master in terms of difficulty, so it will be the most difficult Echo boss in the entire league. I can see a lot of people picking this region because of that exact fact, wanting that extra challenge, but I can also see a lot of people now potentially not picking Varlamore who initially wanted to, because this definitely changes things in terms of what Echo weapons you could want if this does become a boss that you are struggling to actually complete. The two items you could expect from the Echo Soul are the Sunlight Spear and the Sunlit Bracers. The Bracers offer relatively decent both offensive and defensive stats, while also having a special effect of all healing received being increased by 100%. With the Sunlight Spear, you'll be able to gain stacks up to a maximum of 20, and in order to use them, the special attack will take 7 of those stacks, hitting every NPC within a 3-tile radius, and doing damage that is increased by 3% for every prayer bonus point you have. Pair this with something like the Sun Armor you can already expect to potentially receive from the Colosseum, and it'll be very interesting to see how strong this weapon actually is. But those are all of the Echo weapons and bosses that are going to be coming to Leagues 5. Absolutely insane to get them all released on just one day reveal. Personally, in terms of the biggest gainers of people who are now going to be picking that region, I think Fremy is probably going to take the cake. As for ones that are probably going to have fewer picks now based on the bosses, I think Varlamore might be one of them. And Kenora tends to be always a really solid choice just based on task and points. But I don't think the Echo weapon is going to be a big factor in terms of boosting those numbers either. Regardless, let me know down in the description below what your guys' thoughts are. Which weapons do you think are the best? Which ones do you think aren't going to be that big of an impact? Obviously, things will definitely shake up once we find out more information about the combat masteries. Overall, quite the insane reveal. If you guys did enjoy the video or found it helpful, consider dropping a like, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.